Hey, tonight we're going to war. Not the movie kind with swelling violins and clean uniforms. This is World War II, but it's not Europe, and it's definitely not glamorous. No Normandy beaches. No frozen foxholes in the Ardennes. This one's different. It's the kind of war that gets edited out of the history books because it's too wet, too slow, too miserable, and smells like feet, fungus, and death. We're headed to the steaming jungles of Papua New Guinea, to the swamps of Buna-Gona, where entire divisions melted down, not from bullets, but from mud, malaria, and military decisions that could generously be described as experimental. Before we drop in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Only if you want to keep hearing about horrible things that happen to tired people in old uniforms. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is, especially if you're wrapped in a blanket right now, sipping tea and feeling clean, just so you can really appreciate how far removed you are from what you're about to hear. Okay, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan. Not for ambience, but to simulate the sound of 1,000 mosquitoes ready to turn you into a walking buffet. Take a deep breath, because you're about to step into one of the most physically and mentally punishing battlefields of World War II. And no, you wouldn't last a day. You really wouldn't. Congratulations, you've just landed in Papua New Guinea. The year is 1942. You're here because somebody with more stripes than sense decided that this steaming chunk of equatorial misery is strategically important. You don't know what Buna is. You don't know where Gona is. But the military says it's worth dying for. So here you are, boots deep in mud that smells like rotting leaves, dead things, and the distant promise of infection. The good news? You're technically part of history now. The bad news? History doesn't care if you make it through the week. Your first step off the landing craft feels like stepping into a puddle of old soup. The second step feels like you've lost a boot. By step 3, you're sinking. There's no welcome sign, no clean barracks, not even a gravel path, just jungle. Not the lush kind from tourist brochures. This one's got vines that fight back, trees that ooze things, and insects that look like they belong in a horror exhibit. There are no roads, just trails hacked into the brush by men who didn't last long enough to finish the job. Your gear weighs about 50 pounds, all of it designed for a different war in a different climate. Your helmet is too hot, your boots are too thin. Your uniform's made of fabric that absorbs water like a sponge and dries never. You're already sweating like a busted pipe, and you haven't even met the enemy yet. But the enemy isn't just Japanese troops, it's the jungle. It's the heat. It's the constant smell of mildew and decay that never leaves your nostrils. You're not at war with just bullets, you're at war with nature itself. And it's not losing. There's no base here. No organised supply lines. No paved runways. There's a pile of crates someone called a logistics plan, and a few tents already sagging under the weight of wet canvas and despair. Your fellow soldiers are already here, and they look like survivors of something no one wants to talk about. Their uniforms are stained. Their eyes are hollow, and their skin is the colour of old parchment. You say hi. No one says hi back. You ask where the front line is. Someone laughs. Then someone else coughs up something wet and red. You drop your gear near a tent and immediately regret it, because the ground underneath is soft in the way that suggests either sewage or something dead. Possibly both. The air smells wrong. It's thick, like breathing through a damp rag dipped in old grease. Every breath tastes like boiled plant matter and regret. You wipe sweat from your face, only to find that it doesn't help. There's more sweat waiting. There's always more sweat. Within an hour, your body is already changing. Your skin starts to itch. Your legs develop heat rash that feels like sandpaper glued to your thighs. Your boots rub blisters into places that shouldn't be blistered. Your underwear becomes a damp trap of bacteria and chafing. You think about changing clothes until you remember. You only brought one set. There's no orientation, no pep talk. Just a tired corporal pointing vaguely toward the trees and muttering, "Don't go past the ridge. They're out there." You don't ask who they are. You already know. Japanese troops, entrenched, fortified, and not particularly interested in surrendering. They've been here longer than you, and it shows. They know the terrain. You barely know where the latrine is. Actually, there is no latrine. That's going to be its own problem. It rains. Not the polite kind of rain that sprinkles for a bit and moves on. This is New Guinea rain. Aggressive. Unrelenting. It comes down in sheets, soaking everything you own, even the stuff you thought was waterproof. Your rations, wet. Your socks, wet. Your morale, absolutely soaked. You watch as one of your tents collapses under the weight of the downpour. No one moves to fix it. They just sit there, staring into the distance like maybe if they concentrate hard enough, a rescue boat will appear. Night falls fast. 1 minute it's grey, the next minute it's pitch black, like someone turned the world off. You can't see your own hand in front of your face. The only sounds are bugs, frogs, and something large moving through the underbrush that you hope is just an overly ambitious possum. Spoiler, it's not. There's no light except the occasional flicker of lightning that briefly illuminates the horrifying silhouette of a jungle that wants to eat you alive. You try to sleep, but the ground is lumpy, wet, and crawling with something that bites. You wrap yourself in your poncho like a sad burrito and hope for unconsciousness. It doesn't come. Instead, you lie awake, listening to the sounds of a dozen other men also not sleeping. Coughs, groans, the occasional muttered curse. Somewhere nearby, someone throws up. No one checks on him. Everyone's either too tired or too used to it. You close your eyes again and try to pretend you're anywhere else. You fail. You wake up groggy, sore, and somehow wetter than when you went to sleep. Your feet are swollen, your hands are pruny. You step outside and sink ankle deep into mud that was pretending to be solid for just long enough to lure you in. You don't even bother pulling your boot out. You just keep walking, dragging the swamp with you. Breakfast arrives in the form of a half-frozen can of something that might have been beef stew at some point in its tragic life. You open it with a rusty knife and try not to think about what those floating chunks used to be. You eat it cold because the firewood is too wet to burn, and your stove, if you had one, would have been rusted to death anyway. After eating, you go on patrol. Or rather, you trudge through a half-flooded trail lined with bugs the size of your thumb, plants that sting when you brush against them, and roots designed to twist your ankle just enough to ruin your week. You carry your rifle like it's made of glass, because if it jams, and it will, you won't have time to fix it before someone starts shooting at you. Someone behind you slips and falls into a puddle that might be 2 inches deep or 2 feet. No one knows. No one helps. He just swears, sloshes, and gets back up, covered in mud that smells like open wounds and rot. You stop every few minutes to listen. Not for birds, not for monkeys, for silence. That's when you know they're close. The Japanese don't shout. They don't blunder through the undergrowth. They wait. They hide in holes covered with leaves, camouflaged bunkers, and trees with sniper nests. They're quiet, patient, and really, really good at killing. You don't see anyone today. That's not good news. That means they're watching. You don't fire your weapon. You just sweat, itch, and wait for something awful to happen. When you return to camp, nothing has changed except you're filthier and angrier. Your socks are now living petri dishes. Your boots squelch with every step. Your back feels like someone replaced your spine with rusted barbed wire. You think about writing home, but then you remember mail doesn't come often. And when it does, it brings letters from girlfriends who've moved on, parents who don't understand, and commanders who still think morale is something you can order in crates. You sit down on a soggy log and stare into the middle distance. A mosquito lands on your arm. You slap it. 3 more take its place. You start scratching and don't stop for hours. By the time night falls again, you've got 5 open bites, 2 new rashes, and a growing suspicion that your immune system is waving a white flag. This was your first day. You're not wounded yet. You haven't seen combat yet. You haven't even made contact with the enemy. And still, every cell in your body is already asking what it did to deserve this. Your brain is foggy. Your skin feels like it's trying to abandon ship. Your feet have gone from blistered to borderline trench rot in less than 36 hours. And there are weeks to go, possibly months. That is if you last that long. You lie down again in your mosquito netless, mud-bottomed tent and listen to someone nearby whisper a prayer that sounds more like a threat. In the distance, thunder rolls. Or maybe it's artillery. You're too tired to care. The jungle doesn't sleep, and now neither do you. You're awake, but not by choice. There's no sunrise gently filtering through your window because you don't have a window. What you have is a hole in a canvas tent, and through that hole, a mosquito the size of a small bird just flew in to finish what its cousin started last night. Your eyes open not from rest, but because your skull is pounding, and your joints feel like they've been replaced with gravel. You don't need a thermometer to tell you your fever's spiking. Your entire body feels like it's running on boiled motor oil. Congratulations, it's not a hangover. It's dengue. Nobody talks about dengue in the recruiting office. Malaria gets the spotlight. The diva of jungle diseases with its high fevers, shaking chills, and the whole recurring death march vibe. But dengue? That's the quiet one, the creeper. It doesn't even give you the courtesy of killing you quickly. It just ruins your blood, turns your muscles to jelly, and makes you wish someone would drag you into the bush and leave you for the leeches. You sit up, instantly regret it. Your spine makes a noise. Not a crack, more of a soft, wet crunch. Like something in there just gave up. Your clothes are soaked. Not from rain this time, but from your own sweat. It's not the good kind of sweat from exercise or even fear. This is fever sweat. The kind that smells faintly like metal and guilt. You reach for your canteen and realise it's empty. You forgot to fill it last night. Or maybe you did and then spilled it. Doesn't matter. There's no clean water anyway. Just the rain barrel behind camp that now has a frog floating in it. Across the tent, someone else is groaning. He's got the same thing. Pale, glassy-eyed, wrapped in a blanket that's doing nothing. It's 85 degrees at dawn, and you're both shivering like you've been dumped in the Arctic. There's no medic. Well, technically, there is. A guy named Walton, who used to be a pharmacist's assistant, and now hands out aspirin like it's a magic potion. You drag yourself outside and wobble toward the aid station, which is a table under a tarp with half a dozen guys lying in various degrees of collapse. Walton sees you coming, doesn't even ask, just drops 2 chalky pills into your palm and tells you to lie down if there's room. There's not. So you squat next to a stump and try to remember what it felt like to not want to die from a mosquito bite. Nobody is surprised you're sick. Everyone's sick. Some are worse. Some are just starting. It's a cycle. If you're not sneezing, coughing, vomiting, or running a fever, you're either lying or new. The army sends you here with a rifle and a water purification tablet and calls that preparation. But the jungle isn't impressed by your manual. The jungle wants your blood, and it doesn't care how brave you are. Breakfast shows up. By shows up, I mean a guy with a stained apron slaps something onto a tray that may have been oatmeal 2 days ago. You stare at it. Your stomach flips. You can't eat. Your throat feels like sandpaper. Your head is pounding in sync with your pulse. You sip warm water that tastes faintly of rust, tree bark, and aluminum. It doesn't help. Around you the camp is waking up, if you can call it that. Men stumble out of tents, looking like they just got out of a bar fight they lost badly. Everyone's coughing. Someone's throwing up. A guy off to the side is squatting with his pants down, shaking and muttering. Nobody's shocked. Dysentery's making the rounds too. It's like a casino of tropical disease. Spin the wheel. Maybe you'll get dengue. Maybe it's scrub typhus. Maybe you'll just bleed from your gums for no clear reason. You're told to report for duty. You laugh. It sounds like a dying lawnmower. You stand up and feel your knees buckle. You get to your feet eventually, because refusing isn't an option. You don't call in sick. You don't go on leave. You pick up your gear and shuffle toward the jungle like a zombie in uniform. Your rifle is heavy, your helmet's cutting into your forehead, and your vision's going slightly blurry on the edges. But sure, time to patrol. Time to walk into the wet green hell and pretend you're a functioning human being. You're not. The trail's a mess. Rain overnight turned it into a slip and slide of mud, roots, and leaves hiding foot-deep puddles. You fall twice in the first 10 minutes. Each time, your joints scream. The second fall leaves you with a scrape on your thigh that's already turning red. You pray it doesn't get infected. That's how Jenkins lost half his leg. 1 scratch, 1 day, and a trip to the field hospital that ended with a hacksaw. You march next to a guy who says nothing. He just breathes. Ragged, shallow, in and out like he's rationing oxygen. His eyes are sunken. You glance at his hands. They're shaking. He might have the fever too. He might also be dying. It's hard to tell the difference anymore. Birds screech in the trees overhead. Something rustles to your right. You freeze. Finger on the trigger. Nothing. Probably a monitored lizard, or one of those feral pigs that occasionally charges soldiers just for fun. You keep moving, every step heavier than the last. Your gear rubs your shoulders raw. Your rifle strap is digging into the same spot over and over. You're thirsty. You're sweating. And your head feels like it's full of bees. At some point, your group pauses. You drop to a knee and instantly regret it. Pain shoots up your spine like an electric shock. You blink and your vision dims. Your hands are shaking now too. You look down and see red spots on your forearm. Tiny ones under the skin, Classic dengue symptom. Hemorrhagic fever, if you're unlucky. Internal bleeding, if you're really unlucky. Someone lights a cigarette next to you. The smell makes you gag. He doesn't notice. You dry heave and spit into the mud. A fly lands on your boot and immediately starts licking something off it. You don't bother brushing it away. The patrol ends hours later, or maybe it's only been 40 minutes. Time moves differently when your brain is boiling in your skull. Back at camp, you collapse next to a tree and close your eyes. A breeze touches your face, and for a brief moment you imagine it's cool. It's not. It's just slightly less hot than the air inside your shirt. You don't talk. Talking hurts. Your throat's dry, your tongue feels like cardboard, and your teeth ache for some reason. You wipe your face and find blood in your nose. You're not scared. That stopped hours ago. You're just tired. In the bone-deep, soul-hollowing way that makes every breath feel optional. That night, your fever climbs higher. You dream of strange things. Screaming frogs, marching trees. You wake up with a start, drenched, shivering. You think maybe this is it. Maybe this is where it ends. Under a tarp, surrounded by strangers, too far gone for morphine, not sick enough to be evacuated. Just another tick on the casualty list under non-combat causes. You close your eyes again and try to will yourself back to sleep, but sleep doesn't come. Just more sweat, more shaking, more scratching. Somewhere in the distance, a machine gun chatters. You roll over, groan, and press your face into the canvas floor. It's wet. Of course it's wet. Everything's wet. Welcome to morning in Buna-Gona. You'll be lucky if you see another one. You're not walking anymore. You're wading. Through mud. Not the playful kind you splash in as a kid, but the thick, sucking, putrid kind that pulls at your boots like it wants to keep them as trophies. It's not just mud either. It's a cocktail of rot, rain, blood, dead plant matter, and possibly someone who didn't make it back from patrol. You step, you sink. Step again, sink deeper. Every movement is a negotiation with the ground, and the ground is losing patience. The terrain at Buna-Gona wasn't made for humans. It wasn't made for animals either. It was made by geological accident and maintained by indifference. It's flat in the way that only swamps are flat, deceptively, with the occasional crater disguised as a puddle. Every footstep is a gamble. Solid? Soft? Deep enough to lose a man? You won't know until you're knee-deep, thigh-deep, or suddenly horizontal in a trench full of mosquito larvae in shame. No one warned you about this, or maybe they did, and you didn't listen. The pre-deployment briefing said tropical conditions, which you translated as heat and rain. What they meant was biblical flooding and earth that hasn't dried out since the dinosaurs gave up. You could dig a foxhole here, but it will just fill with water in under 10 minutes and turn into a personal grave-sized hot tub, without the heat, or hygiene, or the ability to get out again. Your boots, if you still have them, are filled with swamp water. You don't remember when they stopped being waterproof. Probably sometime between the third storm and your seventh fall. You've stopped trying to empty them. What's the point? Every few steps the mud surges over the top like it's reclaiming them, like you were never meant to walk here in the first place. You see guys stuck up to their shins, crawling to the nearest tree root to pull themselves out. Others just stand still, eyes blank, waiting for the earth to spit them back up, or for a superior officer to tell them what direction to suffer in next. The worst part is, nobody's surprised anymore. You could watch a man get swallowed to the waist, and the most you'd get is a tired chuckle and a one-line about bad footing. Humour's the only defence left when the world under your feet has decided to eat you alive. Trenches are useless. You try to dig, and all you get is sludge. It collapses the moment you finish. You sandbag the edges, and the water just seeps up from below like it's coming to say hello. There's no dry ground, no high ground, just less wet spots that seem promising until you step on them and sink to your ankles in black slime that smells like something died, because something probably did. The Japanese troops have it figured out. Their positions are built on coconut log bunkers, elevated, reinforced, camouflaged. You're not even mad about it. If you weren't so busy trying not to drown in a shallow field, you might be impressed. But you're stuck with what you've got. Temporary fighting holes that flood by lunchtime, collapse by sundown, and become mosquito breeding pits overnight. Speaking of mosquitoes, they love this terrain. This isn't just a jungle. It's a swamp factory. Still water in every direction, perfect for laying eggs and multiplying in biblical numbers. They don't care about your repellent. They don't care that you've been issued a net you never had time to put up. They just swarm. Every exposed inch of skin becomes a buffet. You slap your arms, your neck, your face, and after a while, you just stop. It's not worth the energy. You bleed, you itch, you deal with it. Mud cakes your gear. Your rifle is coated in it. You try to clean the barrel, but every time you fall, which is often, it's right back in the slop. Your uniform, once khaki or green, is now one shade, swamp brown. It smells like mildew and regret. Your hands are wrinkled like you've spent 6 hours in a bath, except the bath was full of parasites and human waste. Trenchfoot. It's not coming. It's here. It's blooming in your boots like a fun new personality disorder. You try to find places to rest. There are none. You lean against a tree, but the tree is wet. You sit on a log, but the log is crawling with bugs. You try to lie down and just... No. Not happening. The mud has soaked through your blanket, your pack, your soul. You can't get dry. You can't get warm. You can't even get comfortable enough to complain. You just endure. Every movement takes triple the effort it should. You don't walk. You drag. You don't march. You stumble. Patrols that should take an hour take half a day. Every 10 steps, someone goes down. Ankles twist, knees buckle, shoulders get wrenched trying to pull each other up. The jungle doesn't care about your schedule. It's not delaying your mission. It's deleting it. One wet, sticky step at a time. The mud isn't just annoying. It's tactical. It slows you down. Makes you easy to spot. Easy to shoot. Your boots squeak. Your pack sloshes. Your footing slips. You are a walking sound machine in terrain that punishes noise. Meanwhile, the enemy's dug in, silent, clean, dry, watching from camouflaged pits with their rifles propped and ready. When fire opens up, you can't run. You can't hit the deck. You're already half sunk. All you can do is drop where you are and hope the mud swallows bullets too. Evacuating the wounded is a nightmare. There are no stretchers, just 2 guys carrying a third over swampy terrain while sinking every few feet. There's no fast exit, no safe route. Every evacuation is a crawl over sludge, under fire, through heat and rain. Some men die before they even reach the field hospital. Some just vanish. One moment they're there, the next, the earth eats them. Maybe it was a shell crater. Maybe it was quicksand. Maybe the jungle just wanted them back. You start naming the puddles. Not because it's funny. Nothing's funny. but because you've walked past them so many times, they feel like neighbours. That one on the left, that's Johnson's Fall. The deep one with the broken log, that's where Andrews lost his boot. And that pit over there, that's just called Don't. There's no escaping it. Rain or shine. And let's be honest, it's mostly rain. The terrain is always against you. You can't outrun it, can't dig through it, can't even sit still in it without becoming a breeding ground for bacteria and existential dread. It sticks to your skin, fills your nose, soaks your food, clogs your rifle. It's not background, it's the main character, and it hates you. You stop dreaming of home. You start dreaming of dry, a floor, a mattress, a sock that doesn't squish. You'd trade your rifle for a towel. You'd give your canteen for 5 minutes on a wooden floor. Something, anything, that isn't soft, wet, and actively trying to infect you. But you don't get that. What you get is another nightfall, another collapse into whatever part of the jungle is slightly less awful than the rest. You close your eyes and hope the mud doesn't climb into your mouth while you sleep. Tomorrow it starts again. Different patrol, same terrain. Designed by nobody. Perfected by time. Maintained by misery. And fully committed to making sure you never, ever feel clean again. There's no breakfast bell, no mess tent, no steaming tray of eggs and bacon waiting to greet your war-ravaged soul. What you get instead is the unmistakable aroma of damp socks, wood smoke, and regret. The breakfast scent of the Buna front. You're awake, again, not because you've rested, but because your stomach is making noises loud enough to draw attention from nearby patrols. You haven't eaten in 14 hours. Maybe 16. You're not counting anymore. Time stopped making sense 3 days ago when your watch got waterlogged and your rations started growing extra protein on their own. You drag yourself upright. Your knees feel like they've been replaced with bricks. You're wet again. There was no rain last night, but your ground sheet did exactly nothing, and now your legs are half swollen from sleeping in a swamp. You spit into the dirt, taste metal. Could be blood. Could be rust. Could be dengue kicking in for round 2. Doesn't matter. You're starving. You shuffle to the supply point, which is just a couple of crates under a tarp pretending to be logistics. A corporal, with one eye half swollen shut, is handing out rations like he's dealing cards in a rigged casino. You get a tin, you get a packet, you get a warning not to ask for seconds. This is what breakfast looks like in the jungle. Dented cans, weevil-filled biscuits, and exactly 1 square of mystery meat that smells like it's seen things. You find a log that's less wet than the others and sit down. You peel open your can with a knife that hasn't been sharpened since Guadalcanal. Inside is a paste-like substance the army calls meat and beans, though no one's found actual meat in it for weeks. It's cold. It tastes like cardboard soaked in beef-flavoured rainwater. You choke it down anyway, because you've burned more calories dragging your boots through mud than this can will ever replace. Then you go for the hardtack biscuit. It's called hardtack for a reason. It's like biting into a cinder block. You give it a few good whacks with your rifle butt, then try again. A piece breaks off, that's the good part. The bad part is what's inside. You notice movement. You squint. Yep. Maggots. Little ones. Wriggling. White. Alive. You stare at the biscuit. Then at the man next to you. He's already eating his, bugs and all. Doesn't even flinch. You look back down and decide, yeah, you're eating them. Protein is protein. You chew slowly. The texture is worse than the taste. You don't think about it too hard. There's no coffee. There's no tea. What you get is rainwater collected from the runoff of your own tarp. It sits in your mess tin, vaguely yellow, with some floaters you hope are leaves. You drink it warm because that's the only temperature water comes in around here. Hot and suspicious. You hold your breath and sip. It tastes like rust, canvas, and yesterday. But it goes down. That's enough. A guy across from you cracks open his meat tin and winces. Green. It's green. Nobody says anything. He just stirs it with a stick and starts eating anyway. Hunger beats caution every time. Another guy pulls a chunk of cheese from a pouch and tries to cut it with a bayonet. The knife bounces off. He gnaws at it like a dog on a rawhide. 2 minutes later he's coughing and shaking his head. Bad batch, he mutters. That's the end of that. Food shows up in waves. Sometimes it's tinned stew. Sometimes it's a dry ration bar made of compressed despair. Sometimes, and this is when morale really hits rock bottom, it's nothing. Just a note from command that supply drops are delayed due to weather, terrain, enemy fire, or general incompetence. When that happens, you scrounge, you beg, you trade. You scrape mould off the last can of peaches and split it 5 ways. You find a half packet of powdered milk and treat it like treasure. Cooking isn't really a thing. You can try lighting a fire, but good luck. Everything is wet. Even the matches are damp. Even if you manage to get a flame going, the smoke brings attention. So you either eat it cold or risk giving away your position for the chance at lukewarm beans. Most don't bother. You get used to the crunch of congealed fat and the sour tang of tin can lining. You eat fast, not because you're in a rush, but because the longer you look at the food, the less likely you are to finish it. Your body starts changing after a while, not just the weight loss, though that's noticeable. Everyone's belt is tighter, faces look hollow, arms hang a little looser, but it's what happens inside that really gets you. Your stomach stops expecting flavour. Your taste buds shut down. You could eat a boot dipped in salt and not blink. You start craving weird things. Raw onions, ash, even the smell of grease becomes intoxicating. A guy once said he'd trade his rifle for a donut. Nobody laughed. A donut sounded like heaven. Sometimes a red crossbox shows up. Inside, luxury. Canned meat with labels. Real chocolate. Actual cigarettes. You see men cry over it, not out of joy, out of disbelief. Like someone handed them a postcard from a planet that doesn't exist anymore. You split it among the squad. 1 square of chocolate each. A spoonful of jam. A cracker that isn't fossilised. It disappears in seconds. And then it's back to the usual. Rations that look like animal feed and taste like sandpaper dipped in salt water. You think you'll get used to it. You don't. You just get too tired to care. You eat because not eating is worse. You stop checking for bugs. You stop gagging at the smell. You just open, chew, swallow, repeat. If you're lucky, you don't throw it up an hour later. Someone in the unit tried fishing once. Found a creek, sat for hours, caught something with fins, cooked it over a fire, proudly served it to the group. 3 men got sick. 1 collapsed. No one tried again. So you finish your maggoty biscuit, lick the lid of the can to make sure you got everything, and drink the last of your suspicious soup. Then you clean your tin by wiping it with your sleeve, because there's no soap, no sponge, and no time. You pack it away, drag yourself to your feet, and wonder how many more meals you'll have to choke down before this place is behind you. If it ever is. Because breakfast may be over, but the day is just beginning. And out here, that's never a good thing. Getting dressed in the jungle is not about fashion. It's not about comfort. It's about survival. And even then, the clothes you've been issued feel like they were designed by someone who's never seen a tree, let alone a monsoon-drenched swamp full of disease and disappointment. Your uniform is regulation US Army, technically. In practice, it's a canvas sack stitched together by blind optimism and bureaucratic guesswork. Welcome to Buna-Gona, where everyone's wardrobe smells like mildew and regret. You wake up in the same uniform you slept in, not because you want to, but because there is no alternative. You own exactly one, maybe two, if you're lucky or connected, or pulled it off someone who didn't make it. You sit up, and immediately everything sticks. Your shirt clings to your back like cling film dipped in soup. Your trousers are damp at the knees, thighs, and pretty much everywhere else. You think maybe it rained again. Or maybe the ground soaked through you. Or maybe you just sweat yourself into a human sponge during the night. Doesn't matter. It's all wet, and it's going to stay that way. The fabric isn't breathable. It's not even flexible. It's rough, stiff, and woven from a unique blend of military-grade masochism and water retention technology. It doesn't wick moisture, it hoards it. And the minute it gets wet, it stays wet, holding the moisture close to your skin like a passive-aggressive towel that never lets go. You roll your sleeves down to cover the new mosquito bites forming constellations on your arms, but the cuffs are so caked in grime that they scrape like sandpaper. Beneath the uniform, things are worse. You've developed rashes. Plural. Your armpits, your groin, your thighs. All red, irritated, and constantly itchy. You resist scratching, knowing full well that the moment you give in, the skin breaks, the wound festers, and you're one step closer to getting pulled off the line by a medic with a hacksaw and a grim expression. This is jungle rot, not a figure of speech. It's a real thing, and it's spreading. It starts with a patch of skin that looks irritated. Then it starts to ooze. Then it smells. Then it spreads. You cover it in talcum powder if you have any. You don't. Socks? A joke. If you're still wearing them, they've fused with your feet. Each time you peel them off, you remove a layer of skin. What's left underneath is not good. Trench foot is always in fashion here. Your toes are swollen, soft, and changing colour in a way that would make a medic concerned if medics weren't already overwhelmed by worse. You try drying your socks in the sun, but there is no sun, just grey sky, damp air, and the occasional torrential downpour that soaks your morals for good measure. Your boots, supposedly built for combat, are actually designed to turn your feet into foot-shaped puddings. The leather's cracked, the soles are slick with slime, and they've lost their shape from being submerged in mud day after day. Walking in them is like strapping on wet bricks. Every step squishes. Every mile rubs another blister. You tried going barefoot once. Big mistake. The jungle floor is littered with sharp roots, biting insects, and hidden spikes of bamboo. So you stay in the boots, slowly fusing with them like some tragic man-shoe hybrid creature no one asked for. Then there's the underwear, or what's left of it. It started as standard issue cotton briefs. Now it's more of a suggestion, full of holes, stretched out, permanently stained. You keep wearing them because the alternative is nothing, and chafing is already bad enough with a single layer between you and the fabric of pain. You've started fantasizing about dry underwear. Not clean, just dry. On top of it all, you've got your gear. Webbing, belt, pouches, all designed for mobility in ideal conditions, which these aren't. The straps cut into your shoulders. The canvas holsters are mouldy. Your ammo pouch smells like swamp and sadness. And every time you try to adjust something, you get a handful of mud or a handful of some creature that was using your cartridge belt as temporary housing. You stop trying to look put together. Your collar's ripped, your shirt's unbuttoned. One sleeve is half torn off from crawling under barbed wire. Your trousers are sagging because your belt broke 2 weeks ago, and you've lost 15 pounds from diarrhea and stress. You tie them with string, or rope, or nothing. You just accept the sag. Helmets? Still wearing them. Not for protection. The enemy rarely shoots at your head. You wear it because it keeps the rain off your face and the bugs out of your hair. It's dented, scratched, and smells like your scalp died in it. You took out the liner weeks ago. It got mouldy. Now you just slap the metal shell on and hope for the best. Personal hygiene is theoretical at this point. You can't wash your uniform. There's no soap, no basin, and no clean water. You rinse it in the river once. It came out dirtier. So now you just wear it until it stiffens. It's not fabric anymore. It's armour made of grime. You could probably stand it up on its own and use it as a scarecrow if you weren't still living in it. You try to remember what clean clothes feel like. You can't. You imagine cotton sheets, fresh socks, a laundered t-shirt. Your brain short-circuits. It's like thinking about unicorns. The idea of being dry, comfortable, and not covered in fungal infections is so far removed from your current reality, it might as well be science fiction. You glance around camp and realise everyone else looks the same. No one's in uniform anymore. They're in rags that happen to be army issued. You see knees through holes that weren't there last week, boots with makeshift soles cut from ammo boxes, sleeves torn off because the sweat made them unbearable. One guy's shirt is held together with safety pins. Another just stopped wearing one entirely. You're all filthy, tired, and dressed like you lost a fight with a dumpster full of wet towels. And the worst part, you're still expected to fight in this, to patrol, to climb over fallen logs, duck under vines, crawl through mud, all while your uniform tries to strangle, stab, and infect you at the same time. You're not just battling the Japanese, you're battling your own clothes. There's no relief in sight. No supply drop with clean gear. No mail truck with a fresh pair of socks from home. You're stuck with what you've got until it rots off your body or someone carries you out of here in it. And even then, they probably won't take it off. No one wants to touch it. Not even the medics. So you cinch up your belt, re-tie your makeshift bootlaces, and adjust your helmet one more time. You're not clean. You're not dry. You're barely holding together. But you're dressed. That's enough. The jungle doesn't care what you look like. It only cares how long it'll take to finish what your uniform started. You're not alone out here. You might feel isolated, cut off from the world, surrounded by mud, death, and the creeping suspicion that no one in high command has ever read a map. But trust me, you're never truly alone. There's always company. The kind that doesn't talk, doesn't care, and never, ever leaves. You've got lice. You've got mosquitoes. You've got roommates now. And they're all having the time of their lives. It starts small. A little scratch behind the ear. You think maybe it's a heat rash. A bug bite. Something minor. But it keeps coming back. Then it spreads. Your scalp feels like it's covered in ants. You scratch until your fingernails come back with scabs. You start finding black specks on your collar, in your hat, in your socks. You squint. They squirm. That's when you know. Lice. Welcome to the front lines. Everyone has them. There's no hiding it. You can't wash them out because you can't wash. You can't pick them off because there's too many. Your hair's not a haircut anymore. It's a jungle ecosystem, and you're the host. Some guys shave it all off. Doesn't matter. The lice just move. Eyebrows, armpits, the waistband of your trousers. Any warm fold of skin becomes prime real estate. You try not to think about where they go at night. You don't sleep anyway. Then there's the mosquitoes. Forget what you know about them. These aren't the lazy backyard pests you smack while sipping lemonade. These are hyper-aggressive, disease-injected syringes with wings. They operate in squadrons, precision attacks, day and night. They find you when you breathe. They land silently, feed quickly, and leave you scratching for hours. Your skin is a road map of red welts, some fresh, some crusted over, all itching like you've been dipped in fiberglass and regret. You slap at them, constantly. Arms, legs, face, neck. Any part of you that isn't wrapped in 3 layers of damp cloth gets eaten alive. And the ones you kill? They leave behind little blood smears. Yours, probably. It's not satisfying. It's just a reminder that there are always more. The buzz near your ear is constant. You try to ignore it. You can't. You cover your face with a cloth, and they bite your hands. You wear gloves, and they bite through the seams. They don't stop. Insect repellent exists. Technically, you were issued some. A little tin of goo that smells like gasoline mixed with foot cream. You used it once. It melted your skin and attracted ants. You haven't touched it since. And yes, there are ants too. Fire ants, army ants, black ants, red ants, ants that bite, ants that sting, ants that just crawl inside your boot for no reason. You'll be on patrol, stop to take a breath, and suddenly realise your leg's on fire. You rip off your sock and find 50 of them clinging to your skin like it's the lunch shift. You jump, you scream, you swear. Nobody even turns around. They're dealing with their own problems. Fleas make an appearance too. You didn't think they'd be a problem until you sat down next to a guy who'd been sleeping in the same trench for 4 days. Now you're scratching your thighs like you're trying to light a fire with friction. One of the medics told you they live in the seams of your pants. You check. He's right. You burn the seams with a lighter. The fleas relocate to your shirt. You give up. There are other things. Things without names. Beetles that hide in your boots. Spiders the size of your fist that crawl across your chest at 3 a.m. and don't bite, just stare. Tiny worms that burrow under your skin and make you feel like you're losing your mind. You once saw a guy pull a leech out of his nose. Nobody asked how it got there. We just nodded and looked away. The jungle is alive, and most of it is inside you. There's no escape. No amount of brushing, swatting, scrubbing, or prayer will make it stop. Every night you try to sleep, and every night the itching gets worse. Your skin's raw, your scalp burns, your fingernails are down to the quick. You scratch in your sleep, wake up bleeding, and do it all over again. Someone mentions DDT, a chemical solution. You get excited, until you realise it's not for your clothes, it's for the perimeter, to keep the bugs out of the supply tent, not to help the soldiers. That would be wasteful. You laugh. It comes out like a cough. You're losing it. Some guys try smoke. They burn damp leaves and stand in the middle of the cloud hoping the bugs will flee. All it does is make you smell like burned swamp and gives you a hacking cough that lasts the rest of the week. One guy tried eating raw garlic, said it made your blood smell bad to the insects. He was wrong. The mosquitoes didn't care, and now he just stinks more than usual. It affects morale. You don't talk about it, but you see it. The way guys scratch until they bleed. The way they flinch at every buzz. The way they snap when someone brushes against them. Everyone's tired, hungry, and broken, but the itching, that's the thing that drives people insane. You'd trade a week's rations for a hot shower. You'd trade your rifle for a bar of soap and 10 uninterrupted minutes without a single bite. But you don't get that. What you get is more bites, more scratching, more nights lying awake under a mosquito net that doesn't work, wrapped in a uniform that stinks of sweat and desperation, trying not to scream as your entire body becomes one massive rash. You've stopped dreaming of victory. Now you dream of calamine lotion, a clean bed, a body not covered in insect bites and trench fungus. You wake up and realise that's never going to happen out here. Out here, the insects win. Every time. So you slap, scratch, pick, and endure. And when someone screams in the night and starts ripping at their clothes like they're on fire, nobody moves, nobody blinks. You just roll over and hope it's not your turn yet, because the bugs aren't going anywhere. They live here. You're just visiting. You feel the first gurgle around mid-morning, that low, ominous churn in your gut. It's not hunger. You haven't been truly hungry since the second week, when your stomach gave up protesting and switched to survival mode. No, this is different. This is intestinal urgency. A full body announcement that you've got maybe 20 minutes to figure out a plan before you're making history in your trousers. Welcome to Buna-Gona's most dangerous game, finding somewhere to relieve yourself before the jungle does it for you. There's no bathroom, you know that already. There's no latrine tent, no outhouse, no privacy curtain, flapping gently in the breeze. The army doesn't do porta potties in the jungle. What you've got is a shovel and a bad attitude. It's called a cat hole, a shallow grave for shame. Standard operating procedure is to find a safe spot, dig a hole, squat, and hope nothing bites you mid-process. It's easy to say, it's impossible to do. Step 1 is locating a site. That means walking away from camp. Not too far, because there are still snipers and patrols out there who would love nothing more than to catch you pants down and vulnerable. But not too close, because the smell travels. You remember that mistake from week 1. You tried to keep it convenient. So did everyone else. And now the northwest corner of camp is a no man's land of flies, gasps, and open bacterial warfare. Lesson learned. You stumble through the brush, holding your gear in one hand, your stomach in the other. Every step jostles your insides. Every route is a tripping hazard and a potential disaster. You find a semi-clear patch of ground that doesn't scream home of venomous creatures and start digging. The shovel's dull, the earth is soft but packed with roots. You make it a few inches down before giving up and convincing yourself that's enough. Now, for the hard part. You drop your gear, untie your pants, which is its own miniature war thanks to jungle rot and broken buttons, and squat. And here, at the exact moment your dignity completely evaporates, the mosquitoes arrive. Like clockwork. It's as if they've got a sixth sense for vulnerability. They swarm your exposed skin, particularly the parts that haven't seen sunlight in weeks. You slap, swear, and try to focus, but your whole body is on high alert, and your knees are shaking from the effort of holding yourself over a half-arsed trench. That's when the ants show up. Fire ants. They don't bite right away. First they crawl, explore, figure out where it'll hurt the most. Then they go in, synchronized, like they trained for this. You swat, wobble, curse, and nearly fall backward into your own disaster zone. You manage to finish, barely, grab a handful of leaves, because that's all you've got, and pray they're not the poisonous kind. Spoiler, sometimes they are. Toilet paper. That's a memory from another life. You started the campaign with a roll or two. It vanished by week 1. Now it's leaves, bark, wet rags, or nothing at all. Some guys saved letters from home and used those. Others just grit their teeth and live with the consequences. You haven't made eye contact with anyone during a bathroom run in days. There's a mutual understanding now. No one asks, no one tells. You bury it, or at least you try. The dirt's wet, the shovel's dull, and you've got about 6 seconds before the flies descend in biblical numbers. You kick some mud over the top and sprint back to camp, hoping the smell doesn't cling to your uniform or your soul. Some units have a communal latrine, which is just a deep pit with a log stretched across it and a scrap of tarp hanging from a tree branch. It's worse than going alone. You sit shoulder to shoulder with another man, both pretending you're not there. No one talks. Everyone stares straight ahead, balancing on a slippery beam while releasing what's left of their dignity into a pit that smells like fermented death. One wrong shift of weight and you're in the hole. It's happened. People don't recover from that. There's always that one guy who thinks it's a good idea to go at night. He brings a flashlight, slips on a route, and wakes up half the camp screaming. You try to help, but it's hard to feel empathy when he smells like week-old stew and is covered in what the army politely calls biological matter. You hand him a blanket, pat his back, and walk away before you start gagging. Then there's dysentery, the great equalizer. When it hits, and it always does, all bets are off. The cat hole system collapses. You can't walk. You can barely stand. You squat wherever you can, whenever you can, and pray it's not near someone's gear. You see guys lose 20 pounds in a week, their skin sagging off their bones, pants soaked, lips cracked from dehydration. Medics try to help. They hand out salt tablets and water and hope for the best. But once it starts, it's hard to stop. And the jungle doesn't pause for illness. You just keep moving, or get left behind. Command tries to enforce hygiene standards. Latrine duty, sanitation checks, all noble goals. But when the nearest clean water source has leeches, your soap was used up a month ago, and your hands are permanently stained with dirt, the idea of clean becomes more philosophical than practical. You do your best. It's never enough. You start dreaming about toilets. Actual toilets, with seats, with privacy, with a flush handle and a roll of toilet paper that doesn't smell like mildew. You remember your bathroom back home, probably didn't think much of it at the time. Now it's a shrine in your imagination. A porcelain temple of grace and mercy. You'd trade a week of rations just to sit on it for 5 minutes. But dreams don't help you out here. What you get is a hole, some leaves, and a prayer that whatever just crawled across your foot wasn't venomous. You wipe, you bury, you rinse your hands in a puddle and pretend that counts, and then you move on. Because there's no pause button in Buna. No break for basic human needs. You don't get a clean bathroom. You don't get privacy. You get what the jungle gives you. And when your stomach growls again tomorrow, and it will, you'll pick up the shovel, pick a direction, and play latrine roulette all over again. Your rifle is your lifeline. That's what they told you back in training, where the air was dry, the uniforms still had tags on them, and the targets didn't shoot back. They made you feel strip it blindfolded. Clean it until it gleamed. Treat it like a sacred object. They said it would never let you down, so long as you treated it right. Then you got to the jungle, and it betrayed you immediately. The moment you stepped off the boat, it started. A slow war of attrition between your weapon and the climate. The heat, the rain, the constant presence of airborne decay that clings to everything. It seeps into your gear like it's got a personal vendetta. You wipe down your rifle that first night, just like they taught you. The next morning it was already rusting. Not just the outer edges or the screws, deep in the bolt, the barrel, the action. Tiny orange blooms of corrosion eating through cold steel faster than you could clean it. You try oiling it. That works for about 6 minutes. Then the oil attracts grit, sand, and whatever microscopic fungus lives in the air out here. Your firing pin becomes a sticky mess. Your magazine jams when you try to reload. The spring groans, the bolt sticks. Sometimes you look at the thing and wonder if you're holding a firearm or a particularly angry paperweight. You're issued the M1 Garand. Reliable, they said. Accurate, battle-tested, but not jungle-tested. The moment it gets wet, and it's always wet, the wood stock swells. You can actually watch it warp over time, like it's trying to twist itself out of service. Your rifle's starting to look like it got left in a hot car for a week, and then buried in a compost heap. You still carry it everywhere, of course. You sleep with it. Clean it when you can. You tap it on your boot to knock out the mud, then scrape the barrel with a rag that hasn't been clean since it left the crate. The bore brush is bent. The cloth is damp. The oil is rationed. Everything you need to take care of this thing is in short supply. Except the rain. You've got plenty of that. Then comes the real test. First contact. You're on patrol, sweating through your shirt, eyes scanning the tree line, and suddenly there's movement. A flash of shadow. Someone shouts. You raise your rifle. Click. Nothing. You chamber again. Still nothing. You feel a kind of panic that doesn't come with screaming. Just that sharp, cold rush of realization that your life now depends on whacking your gun against a tree and hoping it decides to cooperate. Your sergeant says, keep it dry. You ask how. There's no dry. Not in the trenches, not in the field, not under the tarp. You could wrap it in oilskin, sure. If you want to unwrap a slippery, mouldy mess every time someone starts shooting. Try keeping it under your poncho during a firefight. You'll drown before you ever take a shot. You hear stories. Guys filing down their firing pins to keep them from sticking. Swapping parts in the dark, mid-patrol, hoping to Frankenstein a working rifle from 3 broken ones. One guy tried using a Japanese Arisaka instead. Said it worked better in the mud. Got chewed out for it by command. Still used it anyway. Said he'd rather be alive, and reprimanded than dead and regulation compliant. Even when it fires, it's unreliable. The gas system clogs, the sights fog up. Your sling snaps, the trigger pulls rougher than it should, like it's thinking about whether or not to cooperate. And when it doesn't jam, it kicks mud in your face just to remind you who's really in charge. You start double-checking everything. Before patrols, after patrols, during patrols. You become paranoid. You dry fire it 3 times before every shift. You pull it apart and put it back together more often than you change socks. Not that you change socks often, because you only have 1 pair and they smell like fungus and despair. Then comes the maintenance lectures from the rear echelon. Staff officers in pressed uniforms, dry boots, holding rifles that have never seen a single drop of rain, telling you to just clean it properly. You want to hand them your rifle and say, go ahead, field strip that, try it, in the rain, in the mud, in the middle of a mosquito cloud the size of Kansas. Then you can talk. You start carrying backups. Not guns. That'd be too easy. You start collecting cloth, tins, spare springs if you can find them. You beg, borrow, or scavenge anything that might keep your weapon 1 step ahead of catastrophic failure. You clean it with water from your canteen, then curse yourself when the barrel rusts faster than you can dry it. You blow into the chamber to clear grit, then wonder what kind of bacteria you just inhaled. In a firefight, your rifle doesn't care how careful you've been. It either works or it doesn't. You hear shots from the tree line, dive behind a stump, and try to return fire. The first shot goes off. The second jams. You slap the bolt, clear it, fire again, misfire. You're not just fighting the enemy now, you're fighting your own equipment. And the equipment's winning. Some guys get lucky. Their rifles behave. Maybe it's a cleaner gun. Maybe it's voodoo. Maybe they just haven't hit the breaking point yet. You're not one of them. Yours creaks like it's made of rust and curses. Every shot is a negotiation. Cleaning kits run out. You try using shoelaces, bits of rope, even strands of wire to snake the barrel. One guy used his toothbrush. Another guy used someone else's toothbrush. It became a fight. There are bayonets, of course, meant for close quarters, but let's be honest. Half the time you keep it on because you don't trust your rifle to fire when it matters. You jab, stab, swing it like a club if you have to. You're not trained for that, but the jungle doesn't care. By now, you've stopped pretending your weapon is reliable. You treat it like a half-broken radio. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And if you hit it hard enough, you might get a response. You whisper to it before patrols. Not out of superstition, but desperation. Just once, you say. Just work once. You know the irony. The enemy's rifles, old, worn, clunky bolt actions, somehow work better out here. Fewer moving parts, simpler design. Dirt doesn't jam them the same way. You've watched Japanese soldiers fire from trenches so wet they could have planted rice in them, and their weapons keep cycling. Yours? Still thinking about it. Eventually, you start carrying grenades. Not because you want to, but because if your rifle fails, at least you've got something that doesn't care if it's wet. You cradle them like insurance policies. Loud, dangerous insurance policies. But they work, most of the time. So you shoulder your weapon, again, and march into the trees. You clean it when you can, curse it when you can't, and pray every time you pull the trigger. Because out here, you don't trust anything made of metal. Not your gear, not your mess tin, and definitely not the thing that's supposed to be saving your life. But it's all you've got, and tomorrow it'll betray you again. You haven't slept properly in a week. You've got trench foot, jungle rot, and a fever that comes and goes like it's checking on your progress. You're itchy, hungry, armed with a rifle that may or may not function, and carrying 80 pounds of gear that smells like mildew and last week's regret. And now you're about to meet the enemy. The guys who haven't stopped shooting since you got here. The ones you've heard about but haven't seen yet. the Japanese soldiers at Buna. Here's the first thing you notice. They don't run. You've been trained to expect that. You push forward, they retreat, and you advance. They fall back. Not here. These guys don't fall back. They don't surrender. They don't even flinch. You throw artillery at them. You drop mortars. You rake the tree line with machine gun fire for an hour straight and expect the dust to settle. It doesn't. Because when the smoke clears, they're still there. Still firing. Still dug in. They're not in foxholes. They're in bunkers. Log-reinforced, palm-covered, perfectly camouflaged bunkers dug into the sand and hidden under vines like the jungle itself is on their side. You can walk past one and not even know it's there until the guy inside opens fire. Then it's too late. You hit the dirt, return fire, and watch the bullet smack harmlessly into foliage while the enemy reloads from a position so fortified it might as well be part of the earth. You start to understand why progress is measured in yards, not miles, not even feet. Yards. Each bunker is a stronghold. Each trench is a fortress. You don't take ground. You earn it with blood, sweat, and the occasional flamethrower when command gets desperate. And sometimes not even that works. There are stories of Japanese soldiers crawling out of burning pillboxes, skin charred, still holding rifles, still shooting. They're dug in so deep, it's like they were born there. They've got tunnels. Not the kind that cave in when it rains. Actual connected networks. One bunker links to another through an underground passage, so even when you flank them, they're not flanked. You clear a position, move in, and they reappear behind you. You think you've got them surrounded. You don't. You've got them annoyed, and they don't tire. At least it doesn't look like it. You're collapsing from heat stroke, and the third round of dysentery this month. They're still alert. Still aiming. Still crouched in silence, until the moment they unleash a burst of fire that seems surgically precise. You wonder how they haven't broken yet. Then you realise they came here to die. That was the plan. Surrender isn't an option for them. Not culturally, not tactically. If they're down to one man, he's still a threat. One rifle, one grenade, one bayonet, that's all it takes. You hear the phrase banzai charge and laugh at first. Then it happens. In the middle of the night, through rain and mud, screaming like demons, they come out of the jungle, screaming, charging. Not a strategy, a statement. And if you're not ready, if your ammo's low or your rifle jams, you die. Quickly, loudly, and with nothing heroic about it. They don't wear visible rank. You can't target officers because they look exactly like the rest. It's on purpose. Shoot one, no one panics, the next guy just picks up the flag and keeps going. There's no pause, no hesitation. You hit a squad with mortar fire and expect disarray. Instead they regroup and come at you harder. They have no food. You know this because you've taken positions and found empty rice bags and nothing else. No canned rations, no chocolate, no medical kits. They're running on willpower and air. Their boots are worn down to the soles. Some don't even have boots. You find one guy barefoot, covered in dirt, crouched behind a log with a bayonet clenched in his teeth. You don't ask questions. You just keep moving. Snipers are everywhere. You stop trusting trees. You stop trusting shadows. You start looking twice at every branch that looks slightly out of place. There was a guy in your platoon who took off his helmet to scratch his scalp. He didn't finish the sentence he was speaking, just dropped, dead before he hit the ground. No sound, just a single shot from somewhere above and far away. You want to think of the enemy as tired, human, just like you. But that's the problem. They're not acting like humans anymore. They're machines fueled by belief, discipline, and absolute commitment to not letting you win. You don't see fear in their eyes. You see purpose, and it messes with your head. They booby-trap their dead. You move to search a body, and it explodes. They leave grenades under helmets, tripwires in the grass. You stop picking things up. You stop touching anything that looks even remotely out of place. One guy found a cigarette tin and lit up. The rest of you hit the dirt. He didn't even understand why. It was instinct now. You capture a position. You think it's over. It's not. That's just the outer ring. There's another bunker behind it. And another. And another. And they don't sleep. They don't rotate out. They don't get mail or coffee or breaks. They fight until they die, and even then, they make it as difficult as possible. You respect it. You hate it. You're terrified of it. And the worst part? You know they're starving. You know they're outnumbered. You know they're cut off from supply and support and air cover. And they're still winning ground, inch by inch, because they don't need to advance. They just need to hold. They just need to make you quit. You lie in your hole at night, staring into the black trees, wondering how many of them are out there, watching, waiting, perfectly still, perfectly quiet, perfectly ready to die for a patch of jungle that smells like rot and blood and wet bark. You're trying to survive. They're trying to vanish into legend, and they're doing a better job of it. You came here to fight men. Instead, you're fighting the environment. A place so hostile, so indifferent, so profoundly uninterested in your survival that it makes the enemy look polite by comparison. The jungle doesn't hate you. Hate would imply emotion. The jungle just doesn't care if you die. It simply assumes you will. From the moment you landed, it started working on you. First, the heat. Thick, wet, and inescapable. It clings to your skin like a wet towel dipped in soup. There's no breeze. There's no relief. The air doesn't move. You breathe in, and it feels like your lungs are inhaling steam. Not the clean kind either. This is the chemical soup of rot, wet vegetation, and the slow decomposition of everything within reach. You sweat constantly, but the sweat doesn't cool you. It just mixes with the mud and grime until your uniform fuses with your body. Then there's the rain. It doesn't come and go, it just arrives and stays. It's not seasonal, it's not even daily. It's hourly, sometimes constant. Rain that doesn't fall in drops, but in sheets, like someone tipped over the sky and forgot to stop. You can't keep anything dry. Not your pack, not your boots, not your morale. Your rifle gets wet. Your socks stay wet. Your letters from home dissolve into unreadable soup in your pockets. The sound of it, constant, pounding, relentless, becomes a second heartbeat in your ears. Eventually, you forget what silence sounds like. Every path is a trap. Trails vanish overnight. One day it's solid ground. The next, it's a swamp. You step into what looks like shallow water, and suddenly you're up to your waist in muck that smells like dead leaves and disappointment. You try to pull your foot out and leave your boot behind. You go back for the boot and nearly dislocate your shoulder trying to keep balance on a surface that has no intention of supporting you. Walking becomes a full body negotiation with terrain that wants you flat on your back, preferably unconscious. There are roots everywhere. Vines that wrap around your ankles, low branches that swipe your helmet, and thorn-covered plants that seem designed to lash at your face specifically. You can't walk 5 feet without something scratching, slicing, or tripping you, and if you fall, and you will, the ground greets you with mud, insects, and the smell of whatever died here before you. You try to clear brush. You cut it with machetes. Burn it, stomp it. It grows back. Overnight, sometimes faster. You could swear the jungle was watching you, waiting for you to turn around so it can reclaim everything you just cleared. It grows like it's angry, like it resents your presence. Trees you hacked down yesterday are already being swallowed by vines again today. You stop trying to control it. You just push forward and hope the path ahead isn't a trap covered in moss. The sound never stops. Not just the rain, the animals too. Frogs that scream like children. Birds that cackle like they know something you don't. Insects that whine directly into your ear canal. You try to sleep through it and instead dream of sirens and alarms, only to wake up and realise it's just another bug the size of your thumb vibrating against your face. You wear earplugs when you can, but they only mask the obvious noises. The jungle has subtler sounds. Creaks, drips, rustles. Every one of them a potential sign that something's about to bite you. You want to rest. There's no place to rest. You sit down on a log, and it breaks apart under your weight, revealing a nest of termites that scatter up your legs. You lean against a tree, and it weeps sap onto your neck. You lie down to nap, and wake up covered in ants. There is no safe patch of ground. No clear, flat, dry space to stretch out. Just endless damp, lumpy, insect-infested terrain pretending to be a place people can exist. And then come the plants. Harmless looking at first, but the kind that burn your skin if you touch them. You walk through a patch of low green leaves, and 2 hours later your calves are covered in welts. One guy wiped himself with the wrong leaf after a latrine trip and couldn't sit down for 3 days. There's a vine here that oozes white liquid when cut. Someone touched it, rubbed his eyes, and went half blind for 6 hours. You try to remember what's safe, but out here everything is suspect. The jungle punishes everything: movement, stillness, rest, effort. You hike too far, you get heat stroke. You stay still too long, the bugs move in. You try to climb, you slip. You dig a foxhole and water fills it. You build a shelter and termites eat it. You drink water from a stream, and you spend 3 days vomiting your soul out in a ditch. You boil it, sure, but the pots rust and sometimes you forget. Just once is enough. And then there's the mould. It grows on everything. Your boots, your belt, your ammo pouches, your socks, even your skin if you're not careful. You pick up your canteen and find it slick with green fuzz. You reach into your pack and find your extra undershirt has turned into a science experiment. Mould doesn't wait. It shows up overnight, like it's trying to claim territory. You stop fighting it. You just live with it. The smell becomes normal. The itching becomes background noise. You give up on dry socks. You accept that your back will always ache, your feet will always burn, and your hand will always be covered in grime no amount of scrubbing can remove. The jungle doesn't kill you outright. It just wears you down. Slowly, relentlessly, until one day you realise you've stopped noticing the stench. You've stopped swatting every insect. You've stopped cursing the rain. You've gone quiet. Not from discipline, but from exhaustion. The jungle doesn't want you dead quickly. It wants you ruined. And still, you go forward, because the war's not over. There are bunkers to clear, trails to patrol, orders to follow. You move like a man being devoured slowly, one mosquito bite at a time. You stumble through vines, sweat running down your neck, boots full of mud, and whisper a prayer to whatever god controls plants and weather. But the jungle doesn't answer. It never does. It just keeps growing. And winning. You're barely halfway through the morning, and your body already wants out. Not figuratively, not emotionally, literally. It's shutting down piece by piece like an overloaded engine with too much mud in the intake and no oil left to burn. Your hands are shaking. Your skin feels like it doesn't fit anymore. Your mouth is dry, but your face is dripping. You're sweating like a faucet, while your core temperature climbs past reasonable and keeps going. Welcome to the part of the day where heat stroke, hunger, and hallucinations show up to remind you who's in charge. And it's not you. You woke up this morning drenched. Not from rain, not entirely, but from the kind of night sweat that comes when your body spends 8 hours fighting off a fever, only to wake up more tired than when it started. You skipped breakfast, not by choice, but because there was nothing to eat. The supply lines backed up again. Maybe weather. Maybe terrain. Maybe someone finally realised sending food into a swamp filled with artillery and mosquitoes isn't great for logistics. Either way, your stomach's empty. Again. You choke down the last of a stale biscuit from your pocket. It's more weevil than wheat at this point. Doesn't matter. You chew slowly, not because you're savouring it, but because it's the first solid thing your body's had in 36 hours, and you're not entirely confident it's going to stay down. Then the day begins. Another patrol. Another stretch of jungle that looks exactly like yesterday's stretch of jungle, but somehow worse. The heat arrives before the sun even clears the trees. You feel it in your boots first. The way the fabric starts to steam, and the inside becomes a portable sauna for your rotting feet. Then it crawls up your legs, turning your trousers into damp sandpaper. Your shirt fuses to your back. Your helmet becomes a skillet, and the air turns into soup. You can't stop breathing. You keep moving, slowly, carefully. One step at a time, because if you stop, even for a minute, your legs might not start again. You don't feel hungry anymore. That stopped somewhere around last night, when your body decided to cancel all non-essential functions, including digestion and hope. But you're weaker. Every lift of your rifle feels like moving concrete. Every step forward is a negotiation with your knees. The jungle doesn't care, it just watches. By mid-morning, the heat is unbearable. There's no shade thick enough, no breeze strong enough, nothing you can do except sweat and endure. You tip your canteen back. It's warm, metallic, maybe half full. You sip it anyway. You try to ration it, but you've already failed. You were thirsty 2 hours ago. Now you're on borrowed time. The dizziness starts with a slight wobble. You think maybe you tripped. Then the ground tilts a little. You blink, hard. Try to shake it off, but it doesn't stop. Your head swims, your vision fuzzes at the edges. The green around you looks sharper somehow, more saturated. Too vivid, too loud. Then comes the sound, a ringing in your ears. Faint at first, then building like pressure behind your eyes. You hear someone talking. You look around. No one's there. Then someone laughs. A voice you haven't heard in weeks. You turn your head. Nothing. You stop walking and lean on your rifle. Big mistake. Your hands are trembling now. Your breath's short, your chest tight. You drop to one knee, and the heat hits you like a wall. Your helmet slips forward and blinds you. You push it back and feel your hands shaking like they belong to someone else. Someone pulls you up. You don't remember falling. They say something. You nod. You don't know what you're agreeing to. They give you water. You drink it without tasting. You hear your heartbeat in your ears like war drums muffled by cotton. You think you hear birds speaking English. You wonder if you're finally losing it. And then it gets worse. The hunger sneaks back. You thought it was gone, replaced by the fever and the cramps and the blurred vision. But now it's screaming, loud and raw. Your stomach folds inward, gnawing on itself. You remember meals from home. Pancakes, bacon, bread that doesn't break teeth. You imagine biting into an apple so clearly it feels real. You reach for it. Nothing there. Just your own filthy fingers and the taste of dust on your tongue. Someone mentions food, just casually. A letter they got last week talked about roast beef. You want to punch them. Not because you're angry, but because the words made your stomach cramp so hard you saw stars. You laugh instead. Dry, empty, humourless. Then the dizziness comes back. You think you see someone in the trees. Movement, not enemy movement. Someone familiar. You blink. It's your brother? No, can't be. He's back home, safe, clean. But there he is, laughing, waving, holding a cold drink. You reach for him. He vanishes. It was a fern. You blink again. The fern is gone. You don't trust your eyes anymore. The heat keeps building. The sun overhead is no longer just light. It's pressure. A weight pressing you down, squeezing the moisture out of your bones. You want to lie down. Just for a second. Just close your eyes. Just to rest. But you know if you do, you might not get up again. The jungle is full of those stories. Guys who stopped for a nap and never stood again. Not from wounds, from fatigue, from dehydration, from the quiet decision their bodies made to just stop. You keep moving. There's a medic in camp. Maybe he can help. Maybe he'll give you salt tablets and tell you to drink more water. Maybe he'll say, "You're just tired, you'll be fine." Maybe he'll look in your eyes and say nothing, because he's seen it before, the spiral. And he knows there's no real fix, just rest, which you won't get, just food, which you don't have, just shade, which doesn't exist. You try to focus, you count your steps. You listen to your boots squish in the muck. You stare at your hands and watch them tremble and remind yourself this is fine, this is normal. Everyone here is dying slowly. You're just on schedule. By noon, you're sitting in the dirt, sucking water from your canteen like it's oxygen, and wondering how many more days of this your body can take. You don't even think about the enemy anymore. Not today. Not right now. Right now, your enemy is the heat, the emptiness in your gut, the blinding light that keeps flashing just behind your eyes, like the sun got inside your skull. Someone asks you if you're all right. You nod. You lie. Because what else are you going to say? That you're seeing people who aren't there? That your heart feels like it's trying to escape through your ribs? That your brain just started replaying childhood memories like it's preparing a final montage? You stand up. You wipe the sweat from your eyes. You pick up your rifle, the one that still doesn't work half the time, and follow the line of guys ahead of you. It's not even lunchtime yet, and you're already half dead. Mail call. 2 words that used to mean something. Back in basic, it was a moment of joy, of connection, of knowing that the world outside still existed, and remembered your name. But out here, in the sodden underworld of Buna, mail call hits different. It's no longer a morale booster. It's a slow-motion emotional ambush. A sad lottery where the prize is stale cookies, smudged handwriting, and the sinking realization that the longer this war drags on, the more everyone back home keeps moving on. You don't get a warning. 1 minute you're sitting in the mud, poking at your sock rash, and the next, someone yells it out, "Mail!" Guys perk up like they just heard a shot of morphine was going around. Faces change. Spines straighten. People start moving fast, or as fast as you can move when you haven't eaten properly in 3 days and your knees are made of trench rot. The mail's carried in by a runner from the rear, looking cleaner than anyone you've seen in weeks, wearing boots that still have laces. He's got a sack slung over one shoulder, bulging with battered envelopes and half-crushed boxes that smell faintly of mildew, cardboard and disappointment. He drops it with a grunt and steps back, already lighting a cigarette and avoiding eye contact. The platoon sergeant starts reading off names. Some guys lean in. Some lean back. Some don't move at all. The long-timers, the ones who stopped expecting mail 2 months ago. They stare into space, like the whole thing's beneath them. You watch the pile shrink. Letter, package, another letter, some names you haven't heard in days, some you'll never hear again, because the guy they belong to is already buried, or disappeared in the mud, or went home on a stretcher. They still read the names anyway, out of habit, out of hope. Then they skip over the envelope and move on. Your name comes up, somehow. You stand, your joints protesting, and take the thin envelope handed your way. It's stained, smudged. The paper's been soaked at least once. The return address is familiar, but the handwriting looks rushed. You open it with a finger that's split at the knuckle and bleeding a little. Doesn't matter. You start reading. The letter is short. Too short. It's from home, but it might as well be from another planet. They talk about the weather. About your cousin's new car. Someone got promoted. Someone got engaged. There's a new grocery store in town. You read it twice, just to make sure you didn't miss anything. You didn't. No questions about you. No mention of the war. Just a long, slow reminder that time is still moving back there. And you're not in it. The next guy gets a package, a big one, the kind that smells like it used to contain food. Everyone watches. That's just how it works. You don't look away during a package opening. He rips it open with his teeth and finds cookies. Crushed, but edible. Candy, melted into one glob, but still sugar. A pair of socks. Not army issue. Real socks. From a real store. You can smell the detergent from 10 feet away, and it hits like perfume. He breaks the candy blob in half and passes some around. You get a piece the size of a button. It tastes like chocolate and home, and something you'll never be able to describe later without your throat tightening. It dissolves in seconds, and for a moment you remember what it felt like to not be here. Then there's the bad mail. There's always bad mail. Someone gets a Dear John letter. You know it the second they read the first line and stop. Their face doesn't change. That's the giveaway. They just sit there, letter in hand, staring at the words like maybe, if they look long enough, the ending will change. It doesn't. The paper drops into the mud. They don't pick it up. No one says anything. What are you going to say? She wasn't worth it? Maybe she was. Maybe she waited 2 years. Maybe she didn't. Doesn't matter now. Another guy gets a telegram. The really bad kind. From the War Department. Not for him, for his parents. Sent through channels back out here to let him know someone back home didn't make it. A brother. A father. Sometimes a child. if they left someone pregnant before shipping out. The guy reading it says nothing, just folds it back up, neat as can be, and walks off into the trees. Doesn't come back for hours. When he does, he's quiet. Quieter than before. That's how you know it's stuck. You wish you could skip mail call sometimes, but you can't. Even when you know there's nothing for you, and most of the time there isn't, you still show up. Because there's always the chance, in the faint, dumb hope that maybe someone remembered, maybe someone wrote, maybe you'll open an envelope and find a photograph. Something personal, something grounding, something real. More often than not, you get nothing. And that's a kind of news too. A reminder that life continues without you. That the longer you're here, the less they know what to say. You stop expecting anything personal. You hope for junk, ads, receipts, anything. And even if you do get something, a birthday card, a clumsy drawing from a niece who barely remembers you, the high wears off fast. It's like trying to warm yourself with a match in a rainstorm. For 1 second, it matters. Then the jungle snuffs it out. After mail call ends, camp goes quiet. Guys drift off, some smiling, some not. The one who got socks puts them on immediately, even though they'll be soaked within the hour. You pocket your letter. You'll read it again later. Maybe. Then it's back to work, back to the patrol schedule, back to fixing your gear, scratching your bites, boiling your next canteen, back to waiting for the next mail call, knowing it might bring bad news, no news, or worse. A reminder that you've already started to disappear. You're tired, it's raining, and you haven't seen a dry patch of earth in 4 days. Visibility is about 10 feet at best, and that's only if you count blurry silhouettes through foliage that may or may not be trying to kill you as seeing. The map you are given is mostly a damp smear. Your compass needle twitches like it's drunk, and your squad is currently navigating a jungle so dense that the only thing separating you from enemy territory is a guess and some optimistic shouting. You don't know where you are, but worse, you don't know where anyone else is. Which means you're about one wrong move away from getting shot by the same people who write your paycheck. This is friendly fire country. Not because anyone wants it. No one wakes up thinking, hope I can accidentally gun down Johnson today. It happens because this isn't a battlefield with lines and flags and uniforms you can actually see. It's a jungle. A green, choking, sound-warping mess of plants and fog and mud. Everything looks the same. Everyone looks the same. Once they're covered in grime and crouched in shadows with a rifle pointed at anything that twitches. You can't see colours through this much green. You can't tell American camo from Japanese uniforms once it's soaked in sweat and dirt and blended into the foliage. All you've got are vague shapes and whispered call signs. And if you hesitate, you might be dead. If you shoot, you might have just taken out Corporal Sims, who was also lost, who was also trying not to die, who is now face down in the mud, missing most of his chest. It's not always gunfire. Sometimes it's grenades. You throw one because you heard movement. Turns out it was a recon unit circling back, trying to find your position. They had no idea you were there either. You didn't hear their challenge. They didn't hear yours. What they heard was an explosion. What you heard was screaming. And now no one wants to talk about it. Sometimes it's the artillery. Forward observers call in fire on a grid square. You're in that grid square. You don't realise it until the first shell lands 30 feet away and everyone hits the dirt screaming. Then it lands 15 feet away. then 10. You try to wave, yell, signal. But the jungle eats sound. Smoke flares don't work because the canopy is too thick. Radios are unreliable or broken or soaked. The artillery keeps coming until someone at the back realises their math was off. Too late. You've seen guys flinch at every noise now. Not because they're scared of the enemy, but because they're scared it's a buddy misreading a rustle and pulling the trigger too fast. The last ambush wasn't from Japanese troops. It was from your own side, who saw shadows on the ridge and opened up with Browning 30s. The squad they hit was trying to flank the enemy. They flanked you instead. It happens more than once. It always ends the same. In silence, apologies no one says out loud, and a casualty report labelled accidental. Command does its best, in theory. They assign recognition signals, coloured panels, passwords, armbands. Problem is, coloured panels don't show through tree cover. Armbands slide off in the rain or get ripped on branches. Passwords are forgotten, or misheard, or shouted by a guy dying in the middle of a firefight when no one has time to listen anyway. You try yelling, "Don't shoot, friendly," but the other side is already yelling contact, and by then it's too late. Night patrols are worse. Imagine all the chaos of daytime with none of the light. You move by feel, whisper. Watch the outline of the guy in front of you. You think you're on the trail. You're not. You veer left. Another patrol veers right. 10 minutes later you're pointing rifles at each other, finger on the trigger. Everyone's screaming. No one fires. This time. You don't always get that lucky. You hear stories. A guy shot his own point man. Thought he was enemy movement. Another called in a fire mission on a hill that was already being taken by friendly forces. A whole platoon shelled to hell. You can't blame them. Everyone's jumpy. No one sleeps. The enemy's everywhere, or not. You can't tell. Your eyes lie. Your ears lie. The jungle lies, most of all. The brass sends out memos. Avoid blue-on-blue engagements. As if you're all operating out of a clean grid system with GPS and aerial recon. As if "don't shoot your own guys" is somehow new information. As if anyone's intentionally doing it. They treat it like user error. Like it's your fault the foliage blocks line of sight. Your fault that your helmet looks too much like theirs when it's covered in moss. You stop caring after a while. Not because you're heartless, but because you can't carry it. The weight of it. The guilt. The fear of what your twitchy trigger finger might do tomorrow. You just keep your head down and move slower. You double check your targets. You whisper the challenge word 3 times. You repeat your position over the busted radio. You tap your squad mate on the shoulder every 5 minutes, just to be sure he's still him. Still, it's always there. That quiet dread in the back of your mind. That voice that says the next bullet might not come from the enemy. That the next grenade might have your name on it, but written in friendly handwriting. That your last word might be "wait," and no one will hear the rest of the sentence. You don't talk about it in camp. Not really. You all know it happens. But it sits there, unspoken, like the heat, or the rain, or the reek of mildew in every corner of your gear. Part of the landscape, part of the war. A mistake everyone's already made or is just waiting to make. So you keep your eyes open. You move carefully. You whisper instead of yell. You hesitate longer than you should. Because the jungle doesn't have road signs. It doesn't care if you're pointing your rifle at a man who shares your flag. And by the time you realise, the trigger's already halfway down. You've drawn night watch again. Doesn't matter how tired you are. Doesn't matter that you got maybe 20 minutes of sleep in the last 30 hours. Everyone's tired. Everyone's sick. Everyone's one bad cough away from collapsing into the mud and not getting back up. But you're awake now, rifle in hand, eyes squinting into the kind of darkness that doesn't even bother pretending to be night. It's just black. Thick, impenetrable, pulsing with sound. You're not alone. There are others posted along the perimeter, a few dozen yards apart, just far enough that you can't see them, not unless they light a cigarette or blink too hard, which they won't, because that's how people die. No lights, no talking, just the jungle and whatever's moving inside it. And something is always moving. The first thing you lose is depth perception, then your sense of time. 5 minutes feels like an hour feels like a lifetime. Your eyes adjust, sort of, but it doesn't help. Everything becomes a silhouette. Trees, vines, roots, gear, all shadows stacked on top of other shadows. You could swear the brush in front of you just twitched. You blink. It didn't. Or maybe it did. You don't know anymore. Your ears pick up everything. Crickets. Frogs. Drips of water falling from leaves. Wind brushing the top of the canopy like someone exhaling across the jungle's skull. And then something bigger. Something not wind. A footstep. A breath. You freeze. Your heart starts punching the inside of your chest like it's trying to defect. You raise your rifle. Slowly. Quietly. Your finger curls around the trigger. You wait. Nothing. Still nothing. Then something again. Closer now. A snap. A low shuffle. Not big, not loud, just human enough to not be wind, and not animal enough to ignore. You don't move. You just watch the darkness, mouth dry, knuckles white on your weapon, brain screaming at your eyes to please, just once, work properly, and then nothing. Just the regular sounds again. Crickets, frogs, wind, water. It's worse than if it had been something real. Now you don't know. And in this place, don't know is what gets people killed. You breathe through your nose. Shallow. Quiet. Everything feels loud. Your heartbeat, your breath, the sound of your sleeve creaking when you move. You try not to think about how many men have died this way. Sitting perfectly still, listening too hard, until the enemy was already on top of them. A bayonet in the dark. A single shot and then silence. By the time anyone checks, it's just another name to skip at roll call. You glance at your watch, except it's too dark to see. You check it anyway. Something to do. Something to keep you from thinking about how your back is soaked in sweat. Your legs are twitching from fatigue. And your bladder is sending increasingly urgent signals that you're trying very hard to ignore. There are insects, of course, always. The kind that buzz near your ear just to make you flinch. The kind that bite you through your socks. You don't swat at them. Too loud. You just take it. Another tiny violation in a long list of indignities that never seem to end. You shift slightly, and your boot sinks half an inch into the mud. It makes a sound, not loud, but enough. You freeze again. Listen. Everything stops. The jungle quiets. Not silent, just expectant. Like it's listening back. You swear something out there just exhaled. Not wind, not animal. Something with lungs. Something waiting. You scan the tree line. There's no tree line, just a black wall of possibility. You raise your rifle again. You don't aim. You just hold it like a talisman. It makes you feel marginally less alone. Not safer. Just less alone. Sometimes the enemy moves at night. Not often. Not unless they're desperate or insane. But they've done it before. Crawled through the brush on hands and knees. Slipped through gaps in the perimeter. You found the bodies in the morning, or what was left. You set new tripwires, dug new holes, posted more men. Doesn't change anything. You're still out here, listening for breathing that might not even be real. Someone coughs. Distant. Not your direction. Could be one of yours. Could be not. You wait for a password, a signal, anything. Nothing comes. You don't call out. You're not that brave, or that stupid. A branch creaks above you. You look up. Can't see anything. Canopy's too thick. Could be a monkey. Could be a sniper. Could be the tree giving up and deciding to fall. You don't know. You'll never know. You just tuck your chin down and wait for the moment to pass. Eventually, your eyes start playing tricks. You see movement that isn't there. Shapes that dissolve when you blink. At some point, you catch yourself staring at a patch of darkness that you're convinced is a figure, crouched, watching, waiting, only to realise it's your own gear piled up 5 feet away. You laugh quietly, not because it's funny, because if you don't, you'll break. The end of your shift approaches. You hope. No one comes to relieve you. Not yet. Maybe they forgot. Maybe something went wrong. Maybe it's still only halfway through. You think about waking someone. You don't. You just sit there, rifle across your knees, listening to things that may or may not be real, trying not to blink too slowly. Eventually someone shows up, taps your shoulder. You don't jump. You're already too far past startled for that. You nod, stand, stumble off to your corner of the camp, and curl up in a shallow depression that smells like mildew and defeat. You won't sleep. Not really. Just close your eyes and pretend the breathing you heard was nothing. That the shapes weren't shapes. That the jungle didn't see you. And if it did, well, maybe it just let you go this time. You're bleeding. Not gushing, movie-style bleeding. Not the kind that gets a heroic soundtrack and a slow-motion fall. It's worse than that. It's the slow, wet kind. The kind that soaks your sock or mixes with jungle mud until you can't tell what's yours and what's swamp. It started with a sharp snap of pain, a stumble, maybe some shouting. Could have been a ricochet. Could have been a rusty nail. Could have been your own damn bayonet. Doesn't matter. You're hurt now. Which means you're about to meet the medic. You shout, or someone else does. Medic! It goes up like a prayer and a warning. And eventually he appears. Not in a white coat. Not with a clipboard. Not looking like a TV doctor. He's filthy, sweating, and limping slightly from whatever went wrong last week. He's wearing the same uniform you are, except his kit's heavier. Full of tools that wouldn't pass for medical equipment anywhere outside of hell. He crouches beside you, gives your wound a quick glance, and makes a face. Not a dramatic one. Just a slight twitch. Like he's calculating how bad this is against the 50 other things he's seen today. Then he pulls out the medic's holy trinity. A roll of gauze, a pill bottle, and a half-rusted pair of scissors. How's it feel? He asks. Not because it'll change the outcome, but because he has to say something. You tell him it hurts like hell. He nods. That means it's not dead yet. He pours water over the wound. It burns. That's normal. He tells you so while checking for fragments with fingers that look like they haven't been clean since basic. There's no anaesthesia, no numbing agent, just pressure. Maybe some morphine if it's serious, but not too much. They're running low again. He wraps it up tight, maybe too tight. You wince. He apologises without looking up. Need to stop the bleeding? he mutters, already moving on to disinfecting something with alcohol that smells like it could also be used to strip paint. You ask if it's going to be okay. He shrugs. If it turns green, let me know. That's the high standard of care here. If it stays flesh-coloured, you're probably fine. If it turns green, black, or smells like wet garbage, you've got about 3 days before someone's cutting something off. They don't have the tools for surgery, no operating room, no sterile anything, just a tarp, a belt to bite, and someone with a knife and a prayer. Infection is the real enemy. Everyone knows it. You've seen guys go down from scratch. A splinter, a blister that didn't get cleaned in time. The jungle crawls with bacteria. It's in the mud, the water, your boots, your fingernails. You get a cut, and within hours it's puffy. A day later, it's oozing. By day 2, you're running a fever and mumbling about the girl you danced with once in 7th grade. Day 3, the medic's checking your pulse with that look. The quiet one. The you're not coming back from this one. He'll do what he can. Clean it, bandage it, maybe lance it if it swells. There's no anaesthesia for that either. Just a rag to bite and someone to hold your shoulders down while he goes in with a blade that was probably last sterilised with swamp water and optimism. You scream. Everyone does. They don't even flinch anymore. It's just background noise at this point. Malaria. That's daily. Everyone has it. You wake up sweating, shaking, teeth chattering so hard you could chew through your helmet strap. You tell the medic. He hands you 2 tiny white pills and says, try to sleep. That's it. No IV. No bed rest. Just quinine, if they have it. Or atabrine, which makes your skin turn yellow, and your stomach feel like it's being chewed from the inside out. But you take it anyway. Because the alternative is worse. There's no sick bay, no clean cots, no nurses in white. Just a corner of camp where the sick pile up like a collection of bad bets. A tarp stretched between trees. Guys lying shoulder to shoulder, moaning, coughing, sweating through their fatigues, and waiting to either feel better or stop feeling anything at all. The medic moves between them like a battlefield bartender. Painkillers here. Bandages there. A pat on the shoulder for someone who's shaking too hard to speak. You don't ask for much. Maybe an aspirin. A fresh dressing. Maybe just someone to check that you're not dying today. That's the real skill of a good medic. Not just patching wounds, but convincing guys like you that they're going to live, even when the odds aren't great. He tells jokes, bad ones, sometimes dark ones. You laugh, or try to. It hurts. He grins anyway. Means it's working. There's always someone worse. The guy who took shrapnel to the gut and has been screaming for hours. The guy who lost a leg and is drifting in and out of consciousness. The guy who hasn't said anything in 2 days and won't drink water. You look at them, then back at your bandage. Suddenly, your twisted ankle doesn't seem worth complaining about. And the medic. He doesn't sleep. Not properly. He dozes in patches. Eats when he remembers. Lives with the knowledge that no matter how fast he moves, it's not going to be fast enough. Supplies are low. Antibiotics are few. His gloves are torn. His back is wrecked from carrying half-dead men through mud that eats your boots. And still, he shows up, every time. You never learn his first name. No one does. He's just Doc. The guy you call when something goes wrong. The one you hope never gets hit. Because if he does, everyone's chances drop to 0. So yeah, you're hurt, but you're lucky. It's just a gash. It's not septic yet. And Doc says you'll live. He gives you half a cigarette, slaps your shoulder and tells you to keep it clean. Which is a joke, obviously. There's no clean here, only degrees of filth. But you nod, thank him, and limp off, trying not to think about what happens if the fever comes back. Because out here, not dying counts as recovery. And Doc's already moved on to the next guy yelling his name. Orders just came down. Again. You're moving out tomorrow at 500. Not because it makes sense. Not because conditions have changed. But because someone with a clean desk and a dry uniform drew a red arrow on a map and decided that it should be reality. So now, you're going to march through ankle-deep swamp water into a wall of fortified Japanese bunkers because it looked doable on a piece of paper taped to the inside of a canvas tent 3 miles from the actual war. That's how most decisions work out here. Top down, sight unseen, heavy on the optimism, light on the consequences. You'd think they'd learn after the first 24 disasters. But no. Command is committed. Not to winning, but to motion. Progress, momentum, whatever they want to call it in the briefing. So you keep going, into the brush, through the mud, right into places no one wants and no one can hold. All because someone needs to write a report that says, advance achieved. The latest directive, attack through the mangroves, at night, with no aerial support, no armour, just rifles, bayonets, and the raw power of your will to not be court-martialed. The briefing was 15 minutes long, charts, compass headings, coordinated support that may or may not show up. You tried to follow it, but half the map was outdated, and the other half was covered in scribbles. Someone asked about updated reconnaissance. They were told to stay flexible, which is code for make it up when it goes wrong. They talk about terrain like it's an inconvenience, not an obstacle. You tell them the area floods knee-deep every time it rains. They nod and say, understood, proceed anyway. You explain the enemy has reinforced bunkers, pre-sighted mortar ranges, and overlapping fields of fire. They say, engage aggressively. You mention the last time someone tried this route, half the platoon got pinned down, and the other half disappeared into the undergrowth and never came back. Their response? That was then. You wonder what maps they're using. Probably drawn in 1932 by someone who never left the coast. Probably labelled with helpful things like light jungle and passable trail, which in reality translate to bottomless bog, and the exact place your radio signal will fail. Command loves maps. They love lines. They love abstract geometry because it doesn't bleed. They can say secure that ridge without ever knowing it's covered in razor grass and defended by men who haven't eaten in a week but still refuse to die. The real kicker is when they tell you it's going to be a limited engagement. You've heard that before. That's what they called the last one, where 12 guys didn't come back, and the other 7 had to crawl 2 miles through mud, dragging a man whose leg was barely attached. The term limited out here usually just means we don't want to deal with what this is going to become. And logistics don't even start. Command orders in advance. You ask for rations, ammo, maybe a dry shirt. They hand you half a crate of stale crackers, 3 grenades, and a good luck. You tell them the men are sick. You tell them half your squad has fever so bad they're hallucinating. You're told to rotate them out after the objective is taken. No plan for how. No medevac route. Just a footnote in a typed paragraph. Casualties expected. Sometimes they send in observers. Staff officers with pressed fatigues and shiny boots who spend 20 minutes on site before deciding the morale seems adequate and the plan should proceed. They smile, shake hands, take notes, then disappear in a jeep that doesn't get stuck every 10 feet. You don't see them again until the next mess up, when they arrive just long enough to suggest the problem is a leadership gap in the lower ranks. When things go wrong, and they do constantly, the blame rolls downhill. You didn't dig in fast enough. You didn't push hard enough. You didn't adapt to conditions. Never mind that the conditions were impossible and the plan was insane. Command doesn't need the plan to work. They just need to say the plan was followed. The worst part? You still follow the orders. Not because you believe in them, but because the alternative is worse. Refusal means court-martial, maybe jail, definitely shame. And you're already carrying enough. So you nod, you salute, you repeat the plan to your men with whatever scraps of confidence you can scrounge. You lie if you have to. You say things like, Command has a bigger picture. Like there's a strategy behind this, beyond just pushing bodies through jungle until something breaks. Hopefully theirs before yours. You've tried asking questions, real ones. Why now? Why here? Why us? The answers vary, but they always sound the same. Strategic necessity, operational pressure, high-value terrain. Fancy words for because someone up the chain wants it to look like we're doing something. They don't see what it does to the men. How every bad call chips away at trust. How every impossible order makes the next one harder to sell. How every pointless death gets added to a growing list that no one wants to read. They just send more orders. More arrows on maps. More confidence from people who've never had to dig their own latrine during a mortar barrage. So tomorrow you go again. At so 500 into the swamp. Over the same ground you've bled on twice before. No new supplies, no clear path. Just you, your squad, and the quiet certainty that this was all decided by someone who has never seen a swamp, never smelled a trench full of infected water, never watched a man bleed out while holding a copy of an attack order labelled low risk. And if it goes sideways, if everything collapses and the jungle eats another company, don't worry. Command's already got the next plan ready. Another arrow, another briefing, another map, because nothing stops progress, not even reality. Air support at Buna-Gona was supposed to be a game changer. In theory, the skies would be filled with roaring engines, strafing runs, and precision bombing that cleared the way for infantry advances. Instead, what you got was, well, something else. Something that looked more like a circus act than a coordinated military campaign. Welcome to Air Support, Jungle Edition, where the planes come, the bombs drop, and chaos reigns supreme. First, the planes. They weren't the sleek fighters or heavily armed bombers you saw in newsreels. They were older models, worn thin from constant use, flying low over impossible terrain. Pilots were exhausted, maintenance crews stretched thin, and weather was the enemy's best ally. Clouds would roll in, visibility would drop to zero, and the planes would either stay grounded or attempt sorties blind, guided by shaky maps and spotty radio chatter. You got used to the sound of engines cutting out, or planes circling overhead like confused vultures. Then there were the bombs. When they came, it wasn't with the precision you hoped for. The jungle canopy made targeting impossible. What looked like a neat cluster of enemy bunkers from 10,000 feet up was actually a mess of trees, mud, and men hiding in holes you couldn't see. Bombs missed. bombs landed on your own lines. One time, a bomber released a payload directly over your squad's position. Because the pilot mistook the smoke from your campfire for an enemy signal, the concussion knocked half the guys off their feet, and the noise sent everyone into a panic. Speaking of panic, friendly fire from the air was a terrifying reality. The planes didn't always know where the front lines were. Not really. Radios failed, coordinates got scrambled, and the jungle's density swallowed signals. You'd hear the drone of engines, look up, and hope you weren't about to be turned into a shrapnel sandwich. It happened more than anyone wanted to admit. Guys ducking for cover from bullets only to find the sky raining metal fragments. Pilots strafing trenches without knowing friend from foe. The air support you hoped for was sometimes just another hazard to survive. The pilots themselves were frustrated. They saw the ground chaos through the fogged cockpit glass and cursed the jungle's ability to swallow everything. There were stories of pilots who refused to drop bombs without confirmation from forward observers, only to get shot down trying to find a clear target. Others flew blind missions that ended in crashes or near misses. Every successful sortie was a small miracle. Between the bombing runs, the planes would drop supplies, or at least try to. Supply drops over jungle terrain were an exercise in futility. Crates would bounce off tree branches, break open, and scatter food, ammo, and medical kits into the undergrowth. You'd scramble through the debris, fighting off insects, mud, and each other to grab whatever you could. Sometimes, the only thing intact was a box of cigarettes or a few tins of corned beef. Other times, the drop was a total loss. And the bugs? Well, they were everywhere. After the bombers left, the explosions disturbed the ground, stirring up clouds of insects that swarmed the area. You'd be fighting the enemy and mosquitoes at the same time, both just as eager to take you down. The air was thick with buzzing, biting, and the smell of cordite mixed with swamp rot. Then there were the incidents of blue on blue from the air that made you question everything. One squadron mistakenly identified a friendly patrol as enemy troops and opened fire. The result was chaos on the ground, confusion in the command tent, and an investigation that blamed communication errors. The guys on the ground called it a disaster. The brass called it a training opportunity. You learned to take air support with a grain of salt. When the planes came, you hoped for cover, but you prepared for anything, including being strafed by your own side or buried under a crater where you had just been standing. You kept your head down during bombing runs, prayed the bombs missed your foxhole, and cursed the sky for adding another layer of danger to an already impossible situation. Air support was supposed to be your ally. Instead, it was just another reason to stay alert, to duck, and to question whether you would make it through the day. In the Battle of Buna-Gona, the sky was as dangerous as the jungle and the enemy combined. And that, maybe, was the cruelest twist of all. Progress is being made, they say. That's the rumour floating around camp, whispered by officers, muttered over maps, occasionally yelled by someone who hasn't seen the front line in weeks. But for you, progress looks like half a mile of knee-deep mud, a dozen more bodies face down in a swamp, and a case of trench foot that's turning your toes into something better suited for a biology textbook than a boot. Advancing at Buna doesn't look like a charge. It doesn't feel like victory. It's not a dramatic push through enemy lines. It's a slow, excruciating crawl forward. 1 yard, 2 yards. Then a week of nothing but firefights, fever, and fungus. You don't march. You slog. You drag your boots through sucking mud that tries to pull you down like it's had enough of your optimism and would like you to lie still now. Thanks. Every step is a negotiation. Between the weight of your gear, the screaming in your knees, and the quiet despair in the back of your mind. The ground under your feet is less solid earth and more organic soup. You step on a root, you slip. You try to move too fast, you fall. The guy ahead of you disappears up to his thighs, and by the time you yank him free, both of you are covered in a thick grey muck that smells like death and rotten leaves. You check your feet at night, or try to. But what's the point? They've been wet for weeks. Your socks are little more than fungus farms. Your toes have gone from white to pink to angry red. The skin is peeling, cracked, raw. You press a finger against your heel and watch the indent stay for far too long. That's trench foot. That's what progress looks like. The medics do what they can, which isn't much. They tell you to change your socks, as if anyone has more than one working pair. They hand you powders that clump in the humidity and tell you to keep your feet dry. You laugh. Not out loud, that would be rude. But inside you laugh, and then limp off to your next assignment, wondering how long until you can't feel your toes anymore. Some guys have already started losing them. First feeling, then flesh, then the whole foot. You're supposed to be advancing on fortified enemy positions, the kind with bunkers made of logs and mud, reinforced by fanatics who don't sleep and don't give ground. But by the time you get there, you're too exhausted to be angry. You go through the motions. Set up suppressing fire, toss a grenade, advance 3 steps, hit the ground, repeat. Progress isn't measured in feet, it's measured in names. The ones you stop hearing at roll call, the ones you pass motionless on the trail, the ones they carry back wrapped in ponchos and silence. You don't get attached anymore. Not because you don't care, but because caring gets expensive. You remember their faces, their jokes, the way they laughed at breakfast. Then you remember the way they fell, and you move on. You eat when you can, whatever's left. Cold rations, stale biscuits, something that might have been beef in 1940. You boil your water if there's time. Sometimes there isn't. You drink it anyway. Later, when your gut starts cramping and the fever sets in, you tell yourself it was worth it. You were thirsty, that's all that mattered. The jungle doesn't let up. The rain doesn't stop. The mosquitoes don't sleep. You've stopped caring about clean clothes or dry anything. You've got mould growing on your gear. You don't even bother scraping it off. You just keep moving. The enemy's up ahead. Maybe 50 yards, maybe a mile, maybe 10 feet to your left. In a dugout you didn't see because it's covered in palm fronds and pain. You clear a bunker. You throw a grenade inside. Hear the thump, the scream, the silence. You peek in. There's nothing left but heat and smoke. You move on. 30 minutes later, another unit finds the same bunker. There's someone back inside. New occupant. Same uniform, still shooting. You wonder how many of them are left. You wonder how many of you are left. Not in the strategic sense, just in the moment. You count heads, and every day the number gets smaller. You look at your squad and try to remember when it got this quiet, when the jokes stopped, when the laughter died. The forward line isn't a line, it's a suggestion. A vague understanding that somewhere in this direction lies the next fight. Command calls it a push. You call it a shuffle, an inch-by-inch crawl through muck and misery, hoping the guy ahead doesn't hit a tripwire or step into an ambush. You don't talk much anymore. Talking takes energy. Energy's reserved for lifting your boots and not throwing up your last meal. Sometimes you stop to rest. 5 minutes. 10. Maybe long enough to dig your fingers into your calf and force some life back into the muscle. Maybe long enough to wipe your face, shake out your helmet, and wonder when exactly the bottom of your spine started feeling like it was filled with ground glass. Then someone shouts, someone points, and you're up again, moving, always forward, never fast. You tell yourself there's an end to this, that eventually you'll reach the beach, that you'll take the last bunker, that the enemy will finally run out of ammo, or breath, or willpower. But deep down, you suspect that even when the battle's over, the mud won't let you leave. That the jungle has already claimed parts of you that you won't get back. Your strength, your hearing, your sense of time. But you keep going. Because someone said to. Because the guy next to you is still going. Because there's no other option. Progress is slow, measured in blood, in sweat, in steps that feel like punishment. But it happens. One bunker at a time. One dead tree at a time. One trench foot at a time. And when you stop for the night, feet raw, socks rotting, rifle across your lap, you'll stare into the darkness and know, tomorrow you'll do it again. It ends not with a bang, not with a trumpet blast or flag-waving celebration, but with a shrug. A quiet, mud-splattered murmur of, "We got 'em." Someone says the Japanese resistance has collapsed. Someone else says the last bunker's been cleared. There's no parade, no cheering, just the sudden absence of shooting. And even that feels suspicious. You sit there, half slumped against the tree stump, boots rotting off your feet, uniform stiff with filth, brain too fried to process the word. Victory. They say it like it means something. Like it erases the fever, the jungle rot, the night spent listening to wounded men breathe their last 2 foxholes over. Like it brings back the guy who got shot in the back by his own side 3 weeks ago. Or the one who fell into a shell hole and never came out. You want to feel something. Relief, joy, pride. Instead, all you feel is tired. The kind of tired that doesn't go away with sleep. Not that you'll be sleeping. Not tonight. Probably not for a while. The jungle still hums around you, alive with insect static and the sound of rain hitting leaves. Your ears are still tuned for gunfire that isn't coming anymore. Your hands still twitch like they're holding a rifle. Somewhere, officers are writing reports, typing up summaries about strategic objectives achieved, about momentum gained in the Pacific, about a hard-fought success. They'll mention the difficult terrain. They might even nod to the bravery of the troops, but they won't mention the dysentery, the amputated toes, the open sores, the blank stares of men who can't remember what week it is. You hobble to what used to be a camp, and now resembles a collection of damp rags nailed to some sticks. Guys are sitting, silent mostly. No one's celebrating. The only real noise is the sound of someone coughing up something deep and wet, followed by a medic's muttered, "Still breathing." That's the bar now. Still breathing. Oh, you take off your boots. Or what's left of them. Your socks come with them, fused to your skin by weeks of sweat, rot, and pure stubbornness. Your feet look like boiled meat. You don't care. You rub them. You check for blisters you've stopped feeling. You tell yourself this is rest. Someone hands you a can of something. Meat, beans, doesn't matter. You eat it cold, using a rusted spoon you fished out of the mud days ago. It tastes like salt and metal. You swallow anyway. Hunger's automatic now. No connection to appetite. The thing they don't tell you about victory is that it doesn't fix you. It doesn't rewind the tape or clean the wounds. It doesn't unhear the screaming or unsee the guy next to you trying to hold his intestines in with his bare hands. It just draws a line under the operation and says, done. The brass call it closure. You call it Tuesday, you'll be pulled back soon. Maybe to the coast, maybe to a ship. Maybe just to another piece of jungle with a new name and the same problems. They'll rotate you out, give you new socks, maybe let you shower under a barrel of cold water and call it hygiene. Some lieutenant will give a speech. He'll say your sacrifice made a difference. You'll nod. You won't listen. Some guys talk about going home. The word hits different now. You try to remember what home smells like, what clean sheets feel like, what it's like to not carry a rifle every time you walk 10 feet. The image in your head is hazy, faded. You're not sure if that's from memory or damage, because that's the part the after-action reports don't print. The part where your mind doesn't stop marching, doesn't stop scanning tree lines, doesn't stop hearing footsteps in the dark. The part where you wake up grabbing for a rifle that isn't there, heart pounding, eyes wide, still smelling smoke and blood. The part where you sit in silence because you don't have words for what you've seen. And even if you did, no one back home would know what to do with them. You try to smile. Someone cracks a joke about how the army's probably going to hand you a medal and ask you to do it all over again next week. You laugh. It's dry. Hollow. Real enough. So yeah, victory. Technically. The objectives were taken. The enemy was pushed back. The reports were filed. But your squad is half the size it was. The jungle ate the rest. And what's left of you isn't the same as what arrived. Victory didn't come waving a flag. It came crawling, on swollen feet and half-dead legs, dragging the ghost of every man you lost. It stinks like rot, sounds like silence, and feels like the kind of numb that sets in after all the crying's dried up. They'll write about this place in history books, probably misspell a few names, probably clean up the details. But you'll remember the smell, and you'll keep marching. You're back, supposedly. Home, or something like it. A place with roads, walls, toilets that flush, and silence that doesn't feel like it's waiting to explode. There's grass instead of jungle, sky instead of canopy. You can walk a whole block without slipping in someone else's blood, or stepping on a rotting boot. Everything should be fine now. You should feel safe. But safe isn't something your body believes in anymore. You touch the ground, and your legs twitch like they're still bracing for an ambush. A door slams somewhere down the street, and your heart leaps to your throat. A car backfires, and you hit the deck instinctively, shoulder to the pavement, hand reaching for a rifle that isn't slung across your back anymore. You laugh it off. People look. You shrug. Old habits. They nod and keep walking. You don't blame them. You wouldn't know what to say to you either. They throw a parade, or at least a welcome home handshake. Maybe there's a banner. Maybe there's not. Some awkward speeches. A few kind words from strangers who say they're proud. They mean it. That's the worst part. They mean it. But they don't understand what they're proud of. They never saw you crouched in a crater, whispering to a guy who bled out mid-sentence. They never saw your hands shake while trying to jam a magazine into a rifle in the dark, wondering if this was the time it finally misfired. You don't explain it. Not really. What are you going to say? Let me tell you about the time my buddy caught a shell to the stomach and died looking straight at me with half his face gone. Doesn't exactly go well over dinner. So you give the sanitized version. It was rough. Glad to be home. We lost some good guys. That last one's always true. Always too true. People ask questions. Some well-meaning, some not. Did you kill anyone? Did you get hurt? Was it like the movies? You want to tell them yes, no, and not even close. You want to tell them about the heat, the rot, the endless fatigue that clung to your bones like mould. But you don't. You say, yeah, kind of, and move on. It's easier that way. The army gives you some paperwork. Maybe a medal. Maybe a cheque. Maybe nothing. You're thanked for your service, told to take care, and sent off into civilian life, like it's a finish line instead of a long, confusing detour back to a place that doesn't feel like yours anymore. You go to the store and marvel at how quiet everything is, how clean, how slow. Food tastes weird, too bland or too strong. Either way, it doesn't taste like it did out there, like something stolen from a supply drop and eaten in a crouch with mud on your hands. Showers are almost offensive. So much water. So hot. So easy. You remember boiling swamp water over a tiny flame and filtering it through a sock that doubled as a bandage. You think maybe you'll write it all down someday. Get it out. But then the pen shakes in your hand and the words get stuck between your teeth and you realise you're not even sure what really happened. Time out there felt warped. Days bled together. Faces faded. Screams blurred. You remember too much and not enough all at once. And then come the grandkids, someday. Wide-eyed, curious. Young enough to think war sounds like an adventure. They ask what it was like. You pause. The room gets quiet. You think about what you could say. About what they can handle. About what they'll carry forever if you say too much. You say, it was hot. It rained a lot. They press you. Did you see combat? You nod. A little. They ask if you were scared. You say, sometimes. They ask if you were brave. You laugh. Not really, just busy. They want stories. Real ones. But real ones come with body counts. With guilt. With waking nightmares and the smell of cordite and blood soaked into wood and dirt. So you tell them the version with fewer ghosts. You talk about the jungle, the heat, the mosquitoes. You make it sound annoying, not horrifying. They laugh, you smile. And when they leave the room, you sit in the quiet. The silence that's never really silent. You hear it all again. The mud, the shots, the screaming, the coughing, the whisper of someone dying behind you. You close your eyes and see the jungle. Victory came and went. The parade passed, the papers filed, but the war, the real one, never left. It just moved in quietly, somewhere behind your ribs, and set up camp. So yeah, you're home. You made it. Now try explaining it. To them? To yourself? So that's it. The battle ended. The reports were typed. The medals were handed out. And the world moved on. But for the men who crawled through the Buna mud, who bled in the undergrowth and slept beside the dead, it never really stopped. The war just changed shape. The guns went quiet, but the jungle stayed in their bones. In the way they walked, in the way they looked at silence, in the way they never quite came all the way back. You wouldn't last a day there. Not because you're weak, but because no one was built for that. No one was supposed to march barefoot through a mosquito-plagued swamp with a fever of 104 and a rifle that jammed every third shot. No one was designed to watch a friend die over a patch of mud no one would remember. But they did. Somehow, inch by inch. Rotting boots, broken minds, wrecked bodies, and they kept going. So tonight, while you're laying in your bed, dry, safe, clean, let it sink in. The smell of mildew and blood might not reach you, but the story did. One you're not supposed to forget. One most people never even hear. Sleep well. Because someone once didn't.